Very much, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutiny meeting of Oxford City Council on the 10th of October 2024. I'm Councillor Catherine Miles and I'm going to be chairing here today. Just a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so just bear that in mind. Members and officers, keep your cameras on when possible and mics on mute when not speaking. Just as well as a reminder, please use your mics. We're not sitting in a standard order this time, and so it'll just be really important so that our guests online are able to hear you if you can use that. So thank you. So I'm going to hand over to Celeste Reyes-Lau, who is joining us for the first time today in her new capacity. So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Stairs. Councillor Yateman was supposed to substitute, but I suppose we could wait for him when he comes. Yeah, that's all the apologies I've received.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest this evening? No. All good. So just in terms of some chair announcements then, just to reiterate our welcoming of Celeste Reyes-Lau to our meeting in her new capacity. So she's going to be working with us, supporting the whole scrutiny process. So you'll be hearing much more from her. You know her already, so I think the introductions don't have to be repeated anymore, but welcome and we look forward to working with you. Just also to say, since the last meeting, we have had various emails on a couple of additional scrutiny items which aren't going to be discussed today, but just for our long list of items to look at going forward. One is around the fair trade status of the City of Oxford. So I know a number of members cross parties have been receiving information about that, and so that's been put to the list. And also the City of Sanctuary framework, which I understand will be going to Cabinet at some point soon, but that we've requested will come to scrutiny before that. So we'll look forward to that in the near future. I think that's all from the Chair's announcements. So what we'll do, final thing actually, just to say, we will take the minutes in a second, but then just in the interests of time for the officers that are joining us and also the Councillor Brown, who's joined us as well online, we'll take the substantive item first, which is the Local Government Association Corporation Peer Review, which was item 7 in the agenda pack. So we'll take that before the more administrative items. In terms of moving on to the next item, the minutes from the last meeting, understand there has been a small minor amendment for one of the minutes. Celeste, is that correct? Has there been any minor amendments? No, there haven't. No, okay, that's fine. In which case then, are the members aware of any amendments that are needed to the minutes? No. Everyone happy to approve? Yes. Excellent. I think we've got everyone approval there. I think formally, do we need a second? We don't need to second or vote that. No, because everyone's agreed. That's all fine. So let's move on to the LGA peer review. I'm going to welcome Councillor Brown and Mish Tuller, who are both available online, who will introduce the report, and then we'll be inviting questions and then discuss if there are any recommendations. So I don't know who would like to go first, Susan or Mish, but over to you both, and hopefully you can hear us okay.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much for taking us early on your agenda. That's very kind, so thank you for that, Chair. I'll start, and then Mish can fill in the many gaps that I've no doubt leave. So I think it'd probably be helpful to just sort of start a little by setting the scene, bearing in mind there are some newer members, I think, around the table. Firstly, nobody's obliged to have an LGA peer review, or maybe sometimes they are, but that wasn't the case for us. We chose to do that because we thought it would be helpful. It would help add some external oversight to areas where we wanted to particularly have some external oversight, and help us to sort of formulate plans to improve our services to the people of Oxford. So we commissioned the LGA to do such a peer review, and worked with the various different people who came in to do that, and set them some topics of things that we particularly wanted them to look at. What you've got in front of you today is the sort of action plan that we produced and the progress that we made against it for when the peer review came back to check on our progress. And I think it tells a good story, to be honest. We had some really helpful advice and input from those who came for our peer review. And essentially, we made extremely good progress against the action plan we set out as a result of that. And it kind of falls into 10 main areas. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I am going to list the 10 areas because I think that's quite important. So the sort of 10 areas of focus that we had in our action plan were around working in partnership, so co-designing shared outcomes, and you can see that nearly all of the actions in there are complete, although there are some that are ongoing. We also had a big focus on prioritisation. We were really clear that we were aware that although we were a really ambitious council, sometimes perhaps we were, I wouldn't say being too ambitious because I don't think that's possible, but sometimes we were not prioritising enough our ambitions to make sure that we were able to deliver the ones that were really, really important to us. And as a sort of sideline to that, one of the things that came out as a recommendation was around corporate centre and having programme management office, which has now been completed. We asked the peer review to give a good look at our performance management because we felt that we had got too many corporate KPIs, and we've had quite a lot of discussion and scrutiny about that. And as you will see, we basically have done quite a lot of work on that to try and make sure that our corporate KPIs are now more manageable, but also deliverable by the council, which I think is quite key. There was a recommendation that came back to us from the peer review about trying to improve our communication about the important work we're doing in the city around regeneration, and that was something that came from the peer review, as opposed to sort of like something that we kind of threw at them, as it were. So that is something that we've obviously put quite a lot of focus into, and you can see again that many of those actions are complete, although there is one ongoing. We obviously were looking just yesterday at in council at our organisational structure and made a further step in terms of changing our organisational structure. Obviously, having the right organisational structure to deliver our priorities is really important. The other thing that's very important in order to be able to deliver our priorities is to make sure that we've got the right equipment for our people in the council, and IT and the sort of hybrid working structure is really important. There's a lot of work that's been done over the last few years in this area. And there's still work that needs to be done to sort of further roll it out, but we have made really good progress in that area. There was a recommendation, again, this one probably came as much from us to the peer review as from them to us, about trying to make sure that we were aligning the corporate management team and cabinet. And again, we have done some work on trying to make sure that we have more regular meetings between the corporate management team and the whole cabinet. And that's helpful, I think, in terms of making sure that everyone's fully briefed and so on. And then finally, again, something that came from us to them around member development. I think there was some unhappiness around the induction for new members, and we have tried very hard to improve that. And I'm really pleased with what I've heard about how induction worked this year. It's obviously an ongoing issue, and I'm always interested to hear more. I think it actually sits with the standards committee rather than, you'll be pleased to hear, with the cabinet. So if people do have recommendations, I suggest they do take them through that particular body. And then finally, importantly, we asked the peer review if they could have a good look at the way we operate the Oxford model and give us any recommendations they might have in terms of how we might improve that. because again, we wanted to make sure we were on the right tracks and that we had the right governance in place. And there were some suggestions around that, which we are either have implemented or in the process of implementing. And I'm going to stop there, Chair, but it may well be that Mish has got some things that he would like to add. Oh, sorry, no, there is one other thing before I hand over to Mish, and that is to say that obviously a huge amount of this work has been done by Lucy Cherry, who I think unfortunately can't be with us today. But I just wanted to pay tribute to her and the huge amount of work she has done. This is her work I'm talking about here, and she has been absolutely vital to the whole process and organised the peer review and has organised the action plan as well.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and thank you to Lucy Cherry as well from our side, from Scrutiny. Mish, would you like to add to the remarks? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Lucy's priority on a Tuesday evening, I can assure members, is towards the Headington Cub Scouts, and that's where she is at the moment, as with pretty much every Tuesday. So just a couple of additional points. The action plan was created to address the areas of focus that of feedback that we had from the LGA. We developed 50 actions that were shared with them at the beginning of this year, or throughout the end of 23. I'm pleased to say that as things stood at the end of September, we had completed 35 of the 50 actions, with 15 ongoing. One actually has subsequently been completed, the one about publishing a new definition of the Oxford model. That's now on the website. And of the remaining actions, we are expecting them all to be delivered more or less by the end of this financial year. So sort of March. I think there's one that spills over into the beginning of the 25-26 year. And we've also used the whole process of the LGA peer review to inform the corporate strategy, as Councillor Brown has sort of updated the KPIs and review of the way in which we both design and report KPIs has been part of the process of the action planning. And so we've got a new suite of corporate KPIs agreed by Cabinet, and we are finalising the operational ones. And so together with the business plan that is published each year and is updated in terms of progress on the prior year's business plan, and the publication of the two suites of KPIs, I think we feel that there is, a more grip now to be able to respond to keep up in a sense, the learnings we've taken from the LGA process. And on that basis, it's our advice that this is the last such update that we bring forward on the LGA process, and that it, in a sense, is now internalised within our kind of normal management reporting. So we will ensure that those last actions are completed, and we will sort of report internally, but we were not proposing to bring a further Cabinet report on this matter.
Thank you very much, Mish. So what I propose that we do now, and really thank you very much for all your work and Lucy's work and the wider team, because I know a lot of people have been involved in this whole process. But what I think we will want to do is just see if there are any questions, first of all, on what you have said, and then if in turn there are recommendations, we'll discuss those separately thereafter. I can already see some hands. We'll take a few at a time if we have more than one, and so I'm going to open up the floor to see if we've got any questions. And I think we've got Councillor Rowley has a question, and anyone else at this stage? Any other hands? Okay, Councillor Rowley, please.
Thank you, Susan and Mish. It's on the Regen community engagement piece, which due to be completed by March next year. Very good to see. Actually, reflecting something that Councillor Powell said in our meeting last night, which resonates with my experience as a Cabinet member. Obviously, friends groups and the like are important, and it's important to engage with them. They don't always reflect the diversity of interests, views and needs within the community. So what can we do to broaden that engagement and make sure that we hear underheard voices, so to speak?
Thank you. And if I may, on that same topic, just to add, so since the role of the localities team there's something under review, it said in the document. I'm just wondering what the risks are related to this process. Are there any in terms of looking at how you're going to be engaging with communities in regeneration? And since we've not got any other questions at this stage, I'll come back to you, Susan and Mish. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the sort of general point, the kind of starting off point really, which is in the plan, which is about the kind of reworking of the regen and localities teams. I mean, actually, again, just referring back to the decision we took last night, that was kind of like a first step, if you like, in a sort of bigger reorganisation. And there will be further works being done. So that's why it's still an ongoing process. I think Mike makes some really important points about trying to make sure that we hear from all parts of our communities and not just those with the loudest voices. It's something that we try very hard to do, but it's not easy. It's one of the reasons why we have, for instance, a citizens panel in Oxford, which is representative, and that does help us when we're trying to make sure that we have got a wide range of voices. But I do think it is very important that we always do sort of sense check against local and local demographics, if you like, when we are hearing from a particular group of people on a particular issue. Because, for instance, it is very easy for people to loudly protest about something, but often the voices we don't hear are from people who actually support something. And that's particularly the case, I fear, when it comes to housing, for instance. And we know what a huge housing need we have in our city. So it is very important that we do continue to make sure that we balance out hearing from all of those different voices. And that's a really important part of the work of the communities and regeneration teams.
Just to add,
Mish.
yeah, we're also separately within my policy and partnerships team we're in the early stages of undertaking a refresh of the council's community engagement policy, which sort of talks to the point that Councillor Rowley was raising, and how we can sort of continue to work to hear more from those less heard voices. I think that in a sense, the work of localities managers has been particularly sort of focused around trying to achieve that. So it is about essentially knitting together all of the different sort of elements of our engagement with bits of the community. And in some ways, the action here was about trying to ensure that we can better leverage that around some of the regen work that we're doing, because although we've got a team sort of driving our localities engagement, different team undertaking regeneration work, and how we can get those to essentially one to better underpin the work of the other, and that I think has been the focus of this action.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other questions from the floor? Councillor Ottino, please.
So can you elaborate a bit more on your expectations for this pilot between the university hospitals and Leeds Pools and Leisure Centre, and maybe describe what your previous experiences with Rosehill and Barton Community Centres were?
Thank you. Did you manage to catch that? Susan, Mish. Yeah, okay. I will add another question, if I may, unless there are no others. Yeah, to take together. I understand also that in the document that the LGA have highlighted this issue of temporary accommodation costs and budget pressures on that, and that actions have been taken by the council to lobby the government around this in terms of looking at these rising costs for temporary accommodation. But I just wanted to clarify, when were these communications made? Was that before the general election, or have there been communications subsequent with the new national government to express these concerns? Because this was an issue just that was raised. Thank you.
So just on Simon's point, I mean, as far as I'm aware, although there was a pilot, I'm not sure what follow-up is going on in terms of that particular piece of work. I think it was a good piece of work, but it was funded by the NHS. I am not sure, frankly, where we are in terms of future funding for that particular project and whether it can be expanded outwards. I think it would be a very good thing if it was, but we will have to wait and see. Budgets are tight everywhere, including in the NHS, as I'm sure people will be aware. Which takes me neatly onto temporary accommodation. Yes, of course, we have made representations to the new government on temporary accommodation as well. I'm pleased to say that there seems to be a more sympathetic hearing than on with the previous government on this particular issue. It is a very, very serious issue for many councils up and down the country. So, you know, we obviously hope that there might be something in the future budget that will be helpful on that particular issue. But in the meantime, we're working very hard, and I'd just like to pay tribute to City Council officers who have already done a lot of really good work in terms of reducing the costs associated with temporary accommodation. And if it were not for the work that they have done, the costs that we have would be even more huge than those we already have. So I think it is a really good piece of work that they have done. But it remains a very, very significant challenge for us as we go into the budget process.
Thank you. Any further questions from around the table in the committee? Yes, please. Councillor Corrales. Diego, thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. I want to say also thank you very much for this report. I was very enjoyable to read. And my question is, in the report appear about the convince the city anchor institutions. They have the ambition, the motto of ambition to say, convene more, delivery less. Can I develop a little more what this means? Another thing potential I would like also to ask is about these partnerships between the NHS Funding Trust and lease pool. Do you think it's possible to create a similar scheme in other areas in Oxford, for example, in Littlemore? Thank you.
Thank you. I just to see whether there are any other questions that have come up. No. Just to add, I think we had also a point that Michelle raised, that there was one of the recommendations was in the delivery plan was going to be spilling over until next year. So if you could also answer a question as to what that is and what the implications might be for that, please, as well. Thank you.
Okay, so shall I address Councillor Croce's two questions? So firstly, on the issue of convening more and delivering less, I mean, I think that's right. It's something that we have tried to do in terms of our partnership working. it is not possible for us to deliver everything as a city council. And I think that was also one of the things that we were trying to address when we're talking about prioritisation. It's about, you know, what stuff do we need to do as a city council? What is it best that we deliver, and how can we work with other organisations, local communities, local volunteer groups, local charities, support them in delivering some of the changes that we want to see in our city. And I think we've been doing this for quite a long time, and we set up the Oxford Strategic Partnership many years ago now, and that has brought a lot of our leading institutions in the city together to work on key themes and tackle things like poverty, poor literacy, health issues, and so on. And you know, we are together more than the sum of our parts, I guess is what I would say to that. We've also, with the Zero Carbon Oxford Partnership, again, brought together institutions to focus on the really important work that we need to do as a city in terms of reducing our carbon footprint and getting to zero carbon by 2040. And again, you know, bringing people together, we're able to share expertise. We're able to move much faster than we could if we all continued to work separately. So I think it's those sorts of things that we're talking about when we're talking about convening and not just simply delivering. In terms of the specific working with health, I think that as I was saying earlier, really, there are some real difficulties in terms of engagement with health at the moment because of the cuts that are happening in the NHS at the Bob ICB level at the moment, and indeed the ending of the place directorship, which we certainly see as a bit of a retrograde step, because we've worked extremely well with Dan Leveson as a system locally, and I think he's been a real asset to us. So I think it's unfortunate, but when we get these things right, it's really important, because what we want to be doing is prevention work, and so we will continue to try very hard to work with the NHS to do partnership working whereby our leisure centres, our community centres can help deliver good health prevention work, and actually save government ultimately, and the taxpayer as a whole money, as well as massively improve people's lives by allowing them to live healthier and longer lives for far longer. So I think there's a lot of good work that's happening out there. We've done, for instance, good work with Oxford University Hospitals with our homelessness team. So our homelessness team has worked really closely with Oxford University Hospitals to make sure that when people are leaving hospital and they don't have a home, that we are able to offer them support. And one of the things that, funnily enough, and you know, it's not rocket science, that people found is that if you're able to help people to find accommodation when they're leaving hospital, they don't have so many readmittances to hospital. So it was a real sort of saving in terms of the costs to the hospital, but most importantly, for those individuals, it was helping them get accommodation, it was helping them manage their health, and it was massively improving their lives. And that just seems to me that is the sort of work that we need to be doing, working in partnership with health and others to make sure that we're improving the lives of people in our city. But ultimately, a lot of those interventions can actually save money as well.
Just briefly on the specific issues around how we actually engage more with the health system and get that co-location. I mean, we have obviously already done co-location work with the NHS in respect of places like the Rose Hill Community Centre and indeed Barton Leisure, where we've got a smoking programme. The funding that we've sort of got confirmed and work having started, we announced last week on the Youth Hub that Leeds provides a good anchor basis as well. And we know the NHS is interested. We also see that the new government has sort of declared a prevention first approach to health. It is, as Councillor Brown has said, it's a question of translating that into specific action that we can take forward at a local level with the NHS, and it is always a rather slow process. We do have meetings regularly with the Active Lifestyles Commissioning Group, which involves NHS and which involves the public health body from county council as well. So I think we're positive that we can achieve more using our facilities in this way, but this is this is a long process. We've set ourselves that timeline, and you'd asked, Chair, about a timeline for something that spills over into the next financial year. Funnily enough, it's this one. So this is the one that we don't think that we're going to have landed within the current financial year, but nonetheless, we're seeking to progress it.
Thank you. And we have Amar.
Yes, I was caught slightly unawares by Councillor Brown's answer, in that it mentioned the ICB, and just to declare my interest as an employee of the ICB.
Thank you very much. Do we have further questions? I have a couple myself, but I just want to see anyone else. Nothing at this stage. Okay, so just first of all, on the health inequalities point, I understand one of the work in progress is this movement and place framework and this joint team that you've got with the county looking at this. And I'm just wondering what you seek to achieve in terms of addressing health inequalities through this framework. And I understood that there was this joint team that I think you mentioned in with reference to our previous scrutiny meeting around child-friendly cities, looking at health inequalities maybe from the children's perspective. You know, how would that maybe be addressed through that framework? And then second question related to the actual, not the action plan update itself, but the document from the LGA progress review. There are a couple of points around. They mentioned that wholly owned companies are something that council-owned companies are something that are elsewhere, not just in Oxford, and that there is an opportunity for benchmarking of how others manage wholly owned companies. Have you done that? And if so, what has been learned through that? And then finally, there was a reference also in this document to the fact that discretionary services are still being provided by the council, which potentially need to be reviewed as to whether they're affordable and significantly contributing to the council's priorities. Just would like to understand what discretionary services do you think that the peer review document was referring to with reference to that? Thank you.
So I think the first one, Mish is much better placed to answer than me, because he's been much more involved directly in the work. And I should probably also just remind people that I have a declared interest, which is on the public record, that I work for Oxford University Hospitals as well. So just to be clear about that. But on the second point around benchmarking against other companies, I mean, I don't think it was quite as straightforward as that, is my recollection. I mean, I think we were trying to learn from other organisations and how they manage their wholly owned companies. And you're right, many other councils have wholly owned companies, and we have tried to learn from both successes and failures. So we had in the past, for instance, specifically commissioned a report looking into lessons that could be learnt from unsuccessful local companies, the wholly owned companies, because that's just as important as learning from the successes. And that was one of the reasons why we asked very specifically for the peer review to look at our governance arrangements and make sure that we were doing what they felt was the right things in terms of governance. And I'm pleased to say that, largely speaking, they did feel that we had got the right sorts of governance in place. We have made some changes, including sort of separating out a little bit more the scrutiny and shareholder functions, and that that is a result of the peer review. But I think on the whole, we have done some really good learning and listening to other organisations and have built on that.
So just adding, I'm specifically Hounslow and Cornwall as two of the authorities involved in the peer review. The senior officers of those two councils, the Section 151 officers, and officers actually who had commercial responsibility around the wholly owned companies, were absolutely central to the work of that peer review in terms. So it wasn't a benchmarking exercise in the sort of the traditional sense, but it was very much about getting some inputs from two local authorities, which I think are both recognised as leading in the space of wholly owned companies, to peer review what we were actually doing. There is also, I should add, sort of ongoing and almost continuous benchmarking associated with individual functions of our wholly owned companies, in particular with ODS, where we, I've been involved just in the last couple of months with benchmarking conversations with other local authorities around our waste and recycling services, for example, where we're sort of looking in great detail at the delivery and how that's done. Just turning to the first question about health inequalities and the kind of the spatial place and movement frameworks. There's obviously a lot of work going on health inequalities, which is being driven primarily through the Health and Wellbeing Board, of which, of course, we're a member authority, and where we're sort of pleased that having been very engaged, arguably centrally engaged amongst the second tier local authorities in helping shape the new health and wellbeing strategy for Oxfordshire. There's a much greater focus on tackling health inequalities than perhaps on the preceding documentation. Movement is part of that, and the county council, which obviously is sort of overall responsibility for developing the place and movement sort of project overall. We're working closely with them. They're committed to ensuring that that is incentivized, that healthy opportunities for movement that sort of tackles health issues is sort of central to what that we're doing. So I think that it's that is a kind of an ongoing program that'll be separately reported, of course, the place and movement framework. But there are many strands around health inequalities that are sort of reported separately.
Thank you very much. Any further questions that have arisen? Okay, one final clarification from my side. You in the recommendations, in the report tracking your action plan, there is a reference to the long-term vision of the use of the town hall, and a document's been drafted related to that. Could you just clarify around the purpose of the document for internal bidding for funds and how that actually works as well? Because just wanted to clarify, is it that it's about asking for funds from within the council and those being allocated, or is it going to be used for bidding for funds externally, and to what extent will members be consulted in this process of developing this long-term vision for the town hall? Thank you.
Shall I? I'll have first go at it. I mean, I think it's a bit of both. So clearly, in order to make sure that we're allocating capital funds appropriately and in a way that they can be used, because the projects are real and the costs are real, we have to have a prioritisation process for that. So part of the job of councillors and the cabinet is to try and make sure that we are doing that allocation of capital funds in an appropriate way, and prioritising. So is it this project or is it another project? And whatever project you put money into, you are effectively taking it from another project. So that's part of it. But also we know that the town hall is a very old bit. Well, it's not a very old building. In the Oxford context, it's a relatively new building, I guess, but it's a listed building. It's a grade 2 listed building, which makes almost everything that we do in it quite difficult to do. It's a complex building with lots of different rooms and different levels, and it's a large building, and it's got large rooms in it. It's got a lot of work to do to make it a zero carbon building. And one of the things that we have sought to do in the past is to try and get funding to help us make it zero carbon. And that, so being able to be fleet of foot should such an opportunity come round again is definitely important. Thankfully, quite a lot of that work has been done. And Mish can tell you far more about it than I can. But it's that sort of thing. I mean, there may be money available at some point in the future that we might want to, bid for. However, having said all of that, our new government is telling us that rather than make us go through some tedious bidding process, which seemed to be the modus operandi of the previous government, they would be much more interested in devolving power and monies for us to decide locally how we might choose to spend it. So we'll have to wait and see what comes on offer. But it's always going to be important to make sure that projects are real, that we have got some real costings and real understandings of what is meant and what is needed, and then do the prioritisation process.
Thank you very much.
And that very briefly, so the town hall project, the one phase 2, which is listed out in the action plan here, one of the things that it's looking at, for example, is the very underused space in the basement, and indeed some of the courtyard areas within the town hall, and taking a considered view as to whether or not it would be worth investing to be able to improve some of these areas that are for their use by the public and by staff. Hence the need for some feasibility work, because as Councillor Brown has highlighted, it's complex and expensive doing things to the town hall, and so we do have a process where relatively modest pots are made available on a feasibility basis to then see whether or not an investment case can be made for substantial capital investment.
Thank you for the clarification. At this point, I'd just like to open up in case there are no further questions to see whether they're from the wide range of discrete topics that we've touched on. Are there any recommendations emerging from this scrutiny, Phil, that I want to table today? Nobody is raising any at this stage, so I think we will have no further questions for yourselves, and I'd like to thank you, Councillor Brown and Ms. Tuller, for your attendance and answering our questions today, and wish you a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. So in which case we will then move on to the next item in our agenda, which was the work plan and forward plan. So I think, Celeste, if we can refer to you. And I do believe that there have been some changes since publishing on this. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The committee would have noticed that 3 items have slipped from the October agenda due to recent changes to the forward plan. These are corporate debt policy, antisocial behaviour review, and thriving communities strategy update. At this stage, the 3 items have been deferred to November scrutiny, but we anticipate that antisocial behavior item would be further deferred to January to align with the forward plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so then just in terms of reporting back on the recommendations, which is the next agenda item on which was item 6 in the pack. Just to say that the Cabinet considered recommendations related to 2 reports that we sent to them. So one on antisocial behaviour, and that recommendation was agreed, which you will have seen from the report. The recommendation, though, on the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economy Partnership pledges from the annual update, the recommendations, there were 2, they weren't agreed, but there were some comments which sort of acknowledged the points that we were raising, and so I think they are going to be taken into account in the future, even though there's not a formal agreement there. I'm going to hand over to Celeste for feedback on the other panels. Thank you.
Thank you. The Finance and Performance Panel had met on the 4th of September and considered 3 substantive items: Council Strategy 24-28 Key Performance Indicators, Integrated Performance Report Q1 24-25, Treasury Management Annual Report 23-24. The panel agreed 2 recommendations, one on the Integrated Performance Report and one on Treasury Management Report. These were both agreed by Cabinet. The Climate and Environment Panel met on the 10th of September and considered 4 substantive items that are Net Zero Master Plan, the Annual Air Quality Status Report, Local Area Energy Planning and Mitigation Measures regarding local grid constraints, and Zero Carbon Oxford Partnership expansion. The panel had agreed 5 recommendations, 3 of which were agreed by Cabinet, 1 not agreed, and 1 agreed in part. These are all set out as part of the Cabinet supplementary agenda. Thanks.
Hey, thank you very much. Do we have any questions on any of this? No. Okay, in which case then I think we're moving to the final agenda item, which is dates of future meetings. And so just to note that we will have a meeting on the 4th of November. This is anticipated to be quite a heavy meeting. We will have a lot of agenda items for that. So just to recognise that in advance, you might need some time to prepare and for attending.
Chair, can I just flag that the meeting on the 1st of April 2025, which I think is the last one of this year, or this municipality year, is there's a significant likelihood that that will clash with the Festival of Eid. So I'm just highlighting that now.
Thank you very much. We will take that on board and see if there can be any potential reschedule. I understand that it varies the date, so it's difficult to predict, but
We probably won't know till the evening before, unfortunately.
But we'll see what accommodations can be made, because I recognise that that's important. Thank you. Thank you. So without further ado, thanks everyone for your attendance tonight, and we will see you at the next meeting. Thank you. Good evening.